Tsunamis, something we all learnt about in geography class, and something that, if you're from the UK like me, you were told was a far-off threat. But are they as far off as we were taught? There are actually several records of tsunamis hitting us here in the UK, so today I thought I would talk a little bit about that and what would it actually look like if a tsunami hit us today. Just a disclaimer before starting. When I was researching this video, I saw so many articles about how we were going to die in 2 months and a tsunami was going to wipe us all out. That is misinformation. Everything I say in this video has been backed up by academic sources, so do your research. So what exactly is a tsunami? The universe does not want to know. The United Nations Risk Reduction Team defines it as a series of waves that are extremely large lengthwise and have travelled a long period of time. So you're probably now thinking, I've gotten out of this video on a technicality. It's not a tsunami we see on the news, it's just like a massive wave. But trust me, I'm getting there. These are usually caused by seismic activity, but can also be caused by a massive disruption of water. So this is why you get tsunamis following massive landslides, or if a meteor was to strike the ocean, that would also cause a tsunami. The way I want you to think about this is think about a toilet bowl. Stay with me. Now imagine you've just taken a massive poop in the toilet and then the water splashed back and it's like the worst thing ever. But that water wouldn't have splashed without the poop going in the water. So it disrupts the water, causing a wave. The same thing happens with a landslide. It disrupts the water, causing large waves that wouldn't have been there otherwise. Now imagine that you're done and you want to be rid of it. So you flush the toilet and then the water goes round in circles, causing more waves. This is kind of like seismic activity, where the plates underneath cause the water to be disrupted, creating these massive waves that wouldn't have been there otherwise. See, tsunamis do not come out of thin air. They are always a secondary effect to something, whether it's a landslide, seismic activity, meteor strike, toilet bowl. You know? What this means is, theoretically, a tsunami can happen without the seismic activity we were taught about in schools. It can happen anywhere. With a large enough disruption, a tsunami can follow. So, when researching this, I found records of a tsunami in the UK as recently as in 2004. But the case study I have decided on is the 1755 Lisbon earthquake tsunami. At 9:50 AM in Lisbon, a 8.5 to 9 magnitude earthquake hit, which caused devastation across Europe. Sorry, I should not have been smiling when saying that. The UK was of course included in this. Nearly 2 hours later, at 11 AM, there were waves as high as 4 meters reported in England and Wales, and these are known as tsunami events. Large waves that travelled over long periods of time. Now, it is important to note here, any tsunami that we do get here in the UK will never be as bad as some tsunamis in other areas of the world. So when I say a tsunami threat, I do not mean in the same way that Tokyo would get a tsunami threat. And there is very important to differentiate that here. So how can we actually prove that this happened here in the UK? Geologists can prove that tsunamis have been present in the UK through land deposits. Because of how much energy a tsunami has, it can move things that wouldn't have otherwise moved from the bottom of the ocean to our land surfaces. So this can be anything from like marine fossils to a certain type of geology, anything that wouldn't normally be there, which then appears on the coast. Royal Society in the UK began taking record of this. But we can't rely on these alone. Because of how we define things today versus how we define them then, but we can't use these by themselves because of how we produce and use knowledge these days. So what happened then could be very different to how we interpret it now, so we have to use both things to get the whole picture. So when these geological deposits match up with the historical observations, we get a good idea of where the tsunami hit and what exactly happened. And this is how we start to build the picture of the event. What would it actually look like if we had a tsunami here in the UK? Well, one massive disadvantage we have is that we are not prepared for a tsunami. Especially given climate change, which is affecting other hazards like flooding, money is put towards those events rather than the low probability ones. If a tsunami came tomorrow, we would be at a higher risk because our preparedness levels are lower. What I mean by this is, imagine the same 4-meter wave heading towards Cornwall and heading towards Tokyo. Now, Tokyo has tsunami walls, they have sirens, they have the stuff that keeps them prepared so that the people know exactly what to do should a tsunami appear. In Cornwall, they have none of this. They have a few coastal walls which may protect them somewhat, but they're not nearly as prepared as Tokyo. So if the exact same event were to happen at Cornwall and Tokyo at the exact same time, Tokyo would be in a better place to deal with it, making Cornwall at a higher risk, if that makes sense. So for argument's sake, let's say that the same earthquake that happened in Lisbon in 1755 happened here today. So the first thing that would happen is we would see reports in Lisbon because that is where the epicenter of the earthquake would be. And again, carnage would be everywhere. The higher population means more people would be affected, meaning that the damage would be higher, even though it is the exact same event. But it would also mean that we would have, let's say again for argument's sake, an hour and a half to prepare. So the people near the coast would likely have to be evacuated because again, we haven't had a tsunami event here in so long. We don't necessarily know what's going to happen. Now again, the thing about Cornwall is, even though they haven't prepared for a tsunami, they are very much prepared for coastal water events. So like storm surges causes massive waves, coastal flooding, they're prepared for other hydrological events. So some areas do have these coastal walls, like I mentioned earlier, and depending again on the wave, again let's say it's about 4 meters, these should protect some of those areas. But if it wasn't in those areas, because obviously this tsunami would come in a direction that Cornwall isn't used to, whereas they sort of have an idea of where's going to flood and where resources are needed now, but this would just be different to everything that they've planned for. So let's say the wave misses those coastal defenses. Properties would flood, structure would be destroyed. Again, not on the same scale as some of the tsunamis we see today, but things would be damaged. There would be so much water in the systems that areas would just flood. Like the drainage systems are not built for this. The bottom line is property would be damaged, cars would be damaged, and people could get hurt.